Many times when people are in recovery, they're at their bottom, right? People don't get here because they're on a winning streak. You're not here because you're on a winning streak. You may be a professional. You may have had a great job making great money, but if you have lost everything as a result of your addiction, recovery should be your focus. Hello, my friend, and welcome to the 71st episode of I Love Being Sober, sponsored by Camelback Recovery, Arizona's preferred sober living option to help AA newcomers stay sober during their first year in the program. If that's you or someone you know, then you're in the right place because my name is Tim Westbrook, and I'm the CEO and founder of Camelback Recovery here in the always sunny and always sober Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have helped thousands of people on their path to recovery to stop their suffering and continue on their path. And let's get clear on one thing. We believe that a relapse or a slip is not a part of recovery. And that's exactly why this podcast is dedicated to you or any loved one you know in their first year of striving to live a clean and sober life. The purpose of this podcast is to come clean with all the misinformation that's out there about recovery, addiction treatment, mental illness, and the strategies to stay sober in general. So if you believe you're in the right place, or if you know someone who is struggling with addiction, it's my privilege to share this podcast with you. Now, I have no idea if you and I have ever met, but what I do know is that AA saved my life. And I also know that to find long-term recovery and live happy, joyous, and free, it's not just about stopping your drinking, stopping your drugging, stopping your gambling, stopping the sexual indiscretions, or any other addiction you may have struggled with or suffered from. Because at Camelback Recovery, we believe that sobriety can and should be fun. And look, any recovery process is not easy. It is challenging, it can be sometimes annoying, and for most of us, it is often difficult to stay on the path. But here's the good news. The self-awareness you gain from listening to this podcast, especially if you're in your first year of recovery, will help you make better choices, which will ultimately lead you to living a kick-ass sober life. Visit CamelbackRecovery.com to learn more about treatment strategies for alcoholism, drug addiction, or mental illness. And we even offer recovery coaching so you can enjoy the freedom and happiness you've always searched for. Welcome to the 71st episode of I Love Being Sober, the show devoted to people in their first year of sobriety. If you're pressed for time, listen at 1.5 times speed, and you will still get all the content from this episode. No need to take notes because I've paid a professional note taker to do that for you. The notes to this episode and other episodes are available when you look for them at ilovebeingsober.com. Please do that when you're done listening to this episode. You'll be glad you did. And that's my personal pledge to you for listening in its entirety. Now, although your first year in sobriety is central to our discussions, you and I will also explore other fascinating and important topics such as health and fitness, self-care, food and nutrition, breathwork, and biohacking, just to name a few. All of these things are your gateway to living a kick-ass sober life, which is our mantra at Camelback Recovery. In this episode, episode 71, you'll learn 5 secrets which I believe are critical to avoiding a relapse. You'll discover what the 5 secrets to avoiding a relapse are, along with why these 5 secrets to avoiding a relapse are so important. So lean in and listen carefully, because this episode could have a significant impact on how you can make it to a year and much closer to living a kick-ass sober life. There are 5 key secrets to avoiding a relapse that you must be aware of if you want to avoid a slip or stay on your path to recovery. And first, there are 3 stages of a relapse that I want to point out. And a relapse is a gradual process that ends with the physical act of using drugs or drinking. The first 2 stages are also known as the relapse before the relapse. The third stage is when the actual relapse happens. So first 2 stages. Stage number 1, the emotional relapse. This is the first stage. You might not be thinking about using or drinking during this stage, but you're remembering what it used to feel like when you did. You are also in denial about the possibility that you might relapse. Signs of emotional relapse include You're bottling up your feelings. You're not being open and honest and sharing how you're feeling. Changes to your eating and sleeping habits. You're not regularly attending meetings. Maybe you're going to meetings, but you're not participating. So maybe you're showing up late, you're leaving early, you're looking at your phone during the meeting, you're not present during the meeting. I mean, when I'm all in, and people that are all in, they show up early for a meeting. So you can meet a couple of people and you're present and you're paying attention during the meeting. And then you're staying after the meeting to socialize. And if there's a few people that are going out to coffee or breakfast or dinner or something like that, you're sticking around. You're staying connected to the people that are at the meeting. So there's the meeting before the meeting, there's the meeting, and then there's the meeting after the meeting. And then also being of service, helping set up the room, greeting people, helping clean up the room. There's a lot of things that you can do to be of service and participate and be part of the meeting. Poor hygiene is another sign of an emotional relapse. Isolating yourself from family and friends, that's another sign of an emotional relapse. Mental relapse is the second stage. During a mental relapse, your thoughts are drifting towards using again, even if part of you doesn't want to go back to that part of your life. And this can be a tough stage to come back from. So if you get to this stage, you'll have to open up to your sponsor, to your friends in recovery, to your therapist, to a trusted family member or a trusted friend. Typical signs of a mental relapse include glorifying past alcohol and drug use. And I was at a meeting the other day, actually, I was at a meeting yesterday, and there was a fellow that was there, and he said that he hasn't been to a meeting in 10 days, and he was going to meetings. He was doing the 90 meetings in 90 days. He did the 90 meetings in 90 days, and then now here he is, hasn't gone to a meeting in 10 days. He's starting to look at his social media. He's looking at Instagram, and he's seeing all these Instagram stories, and he's seeing all of his friends having a great time drinking. And what I kind of think about is, or what I thought about was that my Instagram stories, I have Instagram, I have Facebook, and I don't spend a lot of time on social media, but those types of stories don't come up on my feed. And I guess what that speaks to is the people that I attract into my life. I don't attract people that are drinking and doing drugs. That's just not my lifestyle. My lifestyle has changed. So I would say at the beginning, if your lifestyle is revolved around drinking and drug use, you might even want to take a break from social media. So another sign is you're craving drugs or alcohol. Maybe you're thinking about people with whom you used to use drugs with or you used to drink with. Maybe you're planning for the next time you'll use drugs. It's planned out. You've got it in your mind. Maybe you start to dream about drinking or using drugs. And maybe you're thinking about how you can better control your drinking and drug use. Maybe you're lying to your loved ones. We also talk about the drive-by or window shopping. And when I say a drive-by or window shopping, you're literally driving by the liquor store where you used to buy booze from. Or maybe you're driving through the neighborhood you used to score drugs from. Or you're walking down the liquor aisle at the grocery store and you're just looking and you're not buying at this point, but you're doing the drive-by. And that's, if you're feeling triggered, if you're not in a good spot, if you're not feeling strong, that's when people relapse. And especially if you're in your first year, you want to stay away from the drive-bys as much as you possibly can. If acting out sexually was one of your vices, maybe you end up looking at porn, or maybe you go to a website where you used to find prostitutes or sugardaddy.com or seeking arrangements or one of those types of websites. So I'm always involved in some sort of an accountability group. So right now I have a men's group every Thursday, and it's a small group of men, and we share every single week. I'm open, I'm honest with these guys, and I share what's really going on in my life. And this, I can't even tell you, I've always been part of a men's group or part of an accountability group like this. It keeps me honest. It keeps me on the path because Tim needs to talk to somebody besides Tim. If I'm listening to myself, it's not good. I need somebody besides me. And for many alcoholics and drug addicts, we're smart. We're smart people. We can rationalize. We can sell anything. And we think that we know the answers. I can rationalize anything. I can make anything sound good to myself inside of my head. And this is why I need other people to hold me accountable, give me guidance, and many times tell me what to do. Even I've been sober for over 10 years now, and I need people to tell me what to do because I can convince myself that anything is good. I know many people that get to the emotional and mental relapse stages and make it back without physically relapsing. If you get to those points, the physical or the emotional and the mental relapse, you gotta open up, you gotta share, you gotta talk to some other people. This is why it's so important to stay connected to people in recovery or people that you can open up to so that you can keep your recovery on track. Now, the physical relapse, that's the third stage of a relapse. That's the official act of drinking and using. So that's when you actually relapse. And after the physical relapse, this is when the guilt and the shame comes on full throttle. So if you actually do relapse, you've got to make sure that you tell somebody ASAP. The longer you wait, the harder it's going to be to tell somebody, the harder it's going to be to get back on your path to recovery. So now let's get into the 5 secrets. Secret number 1, avoid triggering situations. There are a few types of triggering situations that I'm going to talk about, including the environment, stress, negative emotions, and celebrations. Environment. The people you hung out and the places you went are common triggers. If you started hanging out with your old friends that you drank and drugged with, even if they're not drinking and drugging while they're around you, even if they're clean and sober, you're more likely to reminisce about the good times you guys had together, which could possibly be triggering. When I first got clean and sober, I fully immersed myself into AA. I didn't hang out with my old friends, my old drinking and drugging friends, because that was representative of my old life and that would have been triggering. I needed to get some time under my belt. So I got a sponsor. I started working the steps. I started hanging out with people that I met in the rooms of AA. That was what worked for me. And most of my activities were revolved around recovery. I went to the meeting before the meeting. I went to the meetings. I went to the meetings after the meetings. I did lots of service work, and that was what I needed to do. My first year, I was learning how to live a new life. So I stayed away from my old friends. And here's the deal. Like for me, again, I've been sober for over 10 years. Some of my old friends, I'm still great friends with. I mean, I just stayed away from them for a little while. But some of the old friends, they're not my friends anymore because the only reason they were my friends is because we drank and did drugs together. And that was it. That was the only thing we had in common. So you want to do everything you can to give yourself a chance to making it to a year. And after a year, then you can start to make a decision. If there's people that you want to let back in, then you can do that. So again, here I am over 10 years later. Some of my best friends, my very best friends, are people that I met while clean and sober. My lifestyle is different than it was while I was drinking and using. And drinking and using kind of goes hand in hand with lying, cheating, and stealing. So those are the people that I attracted when I was in my addiction, living an honest life and living according to the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous means that I attract different people. So whether you're in AA or in another 12-step program, or you're a member of Smart Recovery or a church group or whatever it is, you're likely going to figure out what your values are. And you just want to make sure that you're living according to your values. And for the most part, the people that I hang out with today and the people that are attracted to me, we're aligned spiritually, emotionally, mentally. And I mean, most of my friends are clean and sober, but not all of them. And let's move on to stress. So stress is another one of the main triggers of relapse. So troubles at work, home, financial stresses, an abusive relationship, or anything else that causes stress could lead to a relapse. So you want to do whatever you can to minimize the potential stress. And so for me, I look at when I first got clean and sober, I had a recovery job, which I drove for Uber. And it was the best thing I did. And obviously I'm not driving for Uber anymore, but it was amazing. It was amazing. I got to drive for Uber and I got to have conversations with people and it wasn't super stressful. And that's the whole point. I didn't want to create or introduce more stress into my life. I also went back to school and got my master's in addiction counseling. I was also a house manager. These are the things that helped me build my foundation for recovery. And hey, it's not to say that that's what you need to do, but that's what I did. And that was what worked for me. and doing whatever you can to just focus your life around recovery and living your life and doing the things that are not going to create a bunch of stress and create triggering situations is going to help you and give you a better chance of staying on your path to recovery. And the other thing with regards to your career, you're not really looking for your next major career move. I mean, I've seen people go out and think many times when people are in recovery, they're at their bottom, right? People don't get here because they're on a winning streak. You're not here because you're on a winning streak. You may be a professional. You may have had a great job making great money, but if you have lost everything as a result of your addiction, recovery should be your focus. And I mean, if you're able to keep your job and hold it together, great, stick with it. But what I'm saying is don't go out and think that you need to hit a home run and get the best job you've ever had at this very moment in time. Give yourself some time if possible. Okay, and the last thing you want to do is you want to make a list of the people, places, and things that stress you out. So being aware of that, of what causes you stress, can be one of the best things you can do for your recovery. Just being aware can help prevent a relapse. And I'm going to talk more about healthy ways to handle stress when I talk about secret number 5, making self-care a priority. Negative emotions. Those are the other things that can trigger a relapse. Feeling sad, angry, lonely, or ashamed are precursors to a relapse. So learning how to handle these emotions in a healthy way is key to avoiding a slip. Drugs and alcohol are the solution that provides temporary relief. And once the effects wear off, the negative emotions typically come back even worse, along with the guilt and the shame because you relapsed. So learning how to walk through these negative emotions, it's part of life. And we all get to experience negative emotions, and we also get to experience positive emotions. Celebrations, just like unhappy events or negative emotions can cause a trigger, a relapse. Celebrations, just as easily as negative emotions are reasons for people to celebrate, reasons for people to drink, reasons for people to drug. And that's weddings, birthdays, holidays like New Year's Eve, July 4th. There's lots of St. Patrick's Day. Those are all drinking holidays. And so during these events, when everyone else is having a good time, you might become overconfident and think you can have just one drink. You have to remember that you're not like most people. You're here for a reason. You're an alcoholic, you're a drug addict, and if you've admitted that you're powerless over drugs and alcohol, you just have to remember that you can't take that first drink. So you're programmed to live life a certain way. You're programmed to react and respond to situations a certain way. The environment and the situations you were in prior to getting clean and sober led to your drinking and drug use. Knowing and being aware of the situations that are triggering for you that could potentially lead to drugs and alcohol can prevent a relapse from ever happening. Recovery can be extremely difficult, and knowing what your triggers are in advance can help you stay on your path to recovery without slipping. Today's science estimates that 95% of your brain's activity is subconscious. And that means that the majority of the decisions we make, the actions we take, our emotions and our behaviors depend on 95% of the brain's activity that lies beyond conscious awareness. That means that 5% of your thinking is conscious. So what that means is no matter how badly you consciously think that you want to stay clean and sober, you're going to stay clean and sober, no matter how dead set you are on that, your subconscious mind is running the show. 95% of your thinking is subconscious. It's going to take some time before your subconscious thinking changes. And that's why this podcast is dedicated to getting you to a year, because you got to give your subconscious mind some time to change. And if you spend your time around your old friends and at the places you drink and drugged at, your subconscious mind will likely be triggered, which sends you down the wrong path. So it makes sense if you put yourself in triggering situations before you've learned how to deal with them, it's too easy to respond the way you're programmed to respond. The path of least resistance is to do what you've always done. A 2005 study by the National Science Foundation found that we have up to 60,000 thoughts per day, and 95% of those thoughts were the same thoughts we had the previous day. So if 95% of your thoughts are subconscious and 95% of your thoughts today are the same thoughts you had yesterday, it makes sense why we are so delicate during our first year of recovery. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to change your thinking and change the way you respond when you're triggered. During your first year of recovery, do everything you can to stay away from triggering situations. Secret number 2, get rid of your toxic friends. Your old friends promoted your old way of living. It is impossible to start living a new life in sobriety if you're still hanging out with people that are in the disease. As New York Times bestselling author Ben Hardy says, willpower doesn't work. Put yourself around people that are living the life that you want. If you spend too much time around people that are living the same life you used to live, eventually, and it might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, it might not be in a week or 2 weeks or even 6 months, but eventually, if you continue spending your time with people that are in the disease, if you continue spending your time around toxic friends, eventually you're gonna slip. Secret number 3, develop a positive support network. You must surround yourself with people you want to be like, people that have what you want, people that have been down the same path. You've never, ever in your life gotten clean and sober, which is why you're listening to this. So I would enlist family members, friends, addiction professionals, people that you met in support groups, smart recovery, 12-step rooms. These are the people that will guide you, support you, love you, give you direction, give you good suggestions, be honest with you, and help provide the accountability, community, and support that is necessary to achieving long-term sobriety. So what I did when I first got clean and sober, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, I started going to AA meetings. I got a sponsor. I started working the steps. I had a therapist that I continued seeing on a regular basis. I stuck with people. I stuck with the winners, as they say. I also started doing other healthy activities. So bringing healthy hobbies and interests into your life, it's important to do that. Your whole life can't just be revolved around going to AA meetings. There's got to be other things. So for me, I started doing yoga, which my experience is that the principles of yoga are aligned with the principles of AA. And I saw lots of people in yoga rooms that I would also see at 12-step meetings, which is a really comforting feeling. I also started doing CrossFit. I got really into health and fitness and taking care of myself and working out. I mean, that was what I did. I wasn't drinking and drugging if I was working out. And I also stopped smoking. I had a nicotine habit from 19 years old all the way up until I got clean and sober. And the nicotine habit's gone, partially because I'm so into health and fitness. I also started hiking. I would hike, because I live in Arizona, I would hike Camelback Mountain. I would hike 𝐶𝐭 Peak. Those are the two that were pretty close to my house that I loved. I also started doing triathlons. For me, triathlons were amazing. I did Ironman 2 times. And I joined Scottsdale, which was another community. And they say that people that have more communities, happiness is associated with multiple communities. So for me, I had the Ironman community, the Scottsdale community. And in all these different communities, because I'm clean and sober, I kind of attracted other people that were clean and sober. It's just kind of how it works. So there's always people, if I'm doing healthy activities, if you're doing healthy activities, healthy hobbies, healthy interests, you're going to connect with people that are also in recovery, which is a really comforting feeling. In business, I'm a member of Genius Network, which is, I guess it's a mastermind group or it's a connection network focused on business, very successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and that's just another healthy group for me to be part of. Secret number 4, stay in therapy and continue with your recommended treatment plan. You're going to come up with a treatment plan with your therapist, with your case manager, with your parents, with your loved ones. So whatever that treatment plan is, stick with it. And many times I see people that, let's say the recommended treatment plan is to go to inpatient treatment for 30 to 60 days, or let's say 45 days, and then go to sober living for 6 months. They're in sober living for 1 or 2 months, and then life starts to get better. They start to feel better, and they're like, you know what? I think I'm feeling pretty good. I don't think I need sober living anymore. Just remember, it takes time to change. More than 90% of people relapse within a year of getting clean and sober. More than 90%. 67% of people that make it to a year make it to 5 years. 85% of people that make it to 5 years make it for life. So if you're in your first year, your first target is 1 year. Do whatever you need to do to make it to a year. Go to treatment, stick with treatment, don't leave AMA. Stick with your sober living for 3 to 6 months or whatever the recommended amount of time is. And also, if you have the resources to get yourself a recovery coach, that's a great way to provide more accountability and support in your first year. Whatever amount is, and continue seeing your therapist on a regular basis. Whatever you can do to continue, because it's just like if you break your arm and you put a cast on, and the cast is supposed to be on for 8 weeks, and you start to feel good after 6 weeks. You don't take the cast off after 6 weeks. You keep it on for 8 weeks. Because if you take your cast off at 6 weeks, you're still vulnerable and you might re-break your leg and then you're back to square one. That's the same thing with recovery. If you relapse before you hit a year or before you're truly ready, you're back to square one. So we're aimed on getting you to a year. That's what this podcast is about. So doctors, dentists, and airline pilots are required to be monitored for 5 years if they get in trouble for drug or alcohol related issues. This is if they want to keep their license. The success rate for people that continue with that program and make it to 5 years is over 85%. That's a great success rate. Accountability and support. They stick with the program. They're forced to stick with the program, and it costs quite a bit of money to be monitored for 5 years, but that's the goal. Is let's get to 1 year and then let's get to 5 years. You must seek professional guidance to confront the world of emotional issues that you used to avoid by drinking and doing drugs. You must learn how to deal with these issues and relationships in a healthy way. You need a professional to help you with this step. The issues that are causing you to drink, drug, act out, overeat, gamble, etc. Secret number 5, make self-care a priority. Taking care of yourself is crucial to the recovery process because getting clean and sober is so much more than just stopping the drinking and stopping the drugging. You must learn how to take care of yourself mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally. Being in a good place in all these areas is the best way to ensure that you will not slip when you're triggered, because you will be triggered. You must give yourself oxygen before you can give oxygen to somebody else. And what that means is you got to take care of yourself. So for me, self-care is such a big part of my life. And I know I have to take care of myself. So for me, I make sure that I get 7 to 8 hours of sleep every single night. It doesn't always happen, but I do my best to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. I wake up an hour before I have any other commitments. I'm not hitting the snooze button multiple times and then rushing out the door to get to work or to get to my meeting or to get wherever I need to go. My morning routine, I wake up an hour so that I can do my morning routine. I do breath work, I pray, I meditate, I exercise, I do a gratitude list. Every single day I do a gratitude list. I've been doing a gratitude list every single day since I first got clean and sober. That's one of the things that my first sponsor taught me to do. I journal, I read, I study, I do red light therapy, I do an ice bath, I stay connected to other people in recovery. Some of those things are not part of my morning routine, but they definitely make it into every single one of my days. That's how I stay grounded, and that's how I stay on my path to recovery. So here's a quick review about the insights you and I both rediscovered in the 71st episode of I Love Being Sober. We talked about the 5 secrets to avoiding a relapse and why these 5 secrets to avoiding a relapse are so important. If you want to learn how to implement these 5 secrets, come back for the next episode of I Love Being Sober. And remember, these insights will only work for you if you work them. So please make sure that you apply what you've learned in this episode of I Love Being Sober, because if you do, you will be on your way to living a kick-ass sober life. I think you'll agree that that's exciting to think about. And speaking of reviews, before we end this episode, I want you to go to ilovebeingsober.com and type in your biggest takeaway or aha moment you experienced during this episode. You can do this now in the reviews section, and when you do it, iTunes will ask you to rate the episode. I hope I've earned 5 stars from you. So go ahead now, declare your one big takeaway in the iTunes review section by visiting ilovebeingsober.com. It will take you just 3 minutes. and what you declare could provide you with a lifetime of happiness and freedom. Okay, that does it for this episode. I'm Tim Westbrook, and I hope that our paths cross again in the next episode of I Love Being Sober, the show dedicated to living a kick-ass sober life. I hope that sounds like a plan. And do whatever it takes to join me for episode number 72, because we're going to dig into secret number 1, avoiding triggering situations. I encourage you to invite a friend, a loved one, or a sponsee to listen to I Love Being Sober. I can't wait to connect with you then. It will be an insightful episode, so I really want you to join us with your loved one.